Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Alliance Bernstein. Since 2019, employees have impacted our community by giving more than 5,000 hours of volunteerism in Middle Tennessee. AllianceBernstein.com. Alliance Bernstein is not affiliated with National Public Radio.
I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. In My Place educates listeners on what cities like Nashville can do to prevent and end homelessness while caring for our neighbors who are still unhoused. We talk to national and local guests about everything from best practices to worst failures and hear from people who intimately know the complexities of having nowhere to go. This show highlights how affordable housing affects each of us, even if we think it doesn't. This series was created in part thanks to support from Pinnacle Financial Partners. Now, our first guest is Mark Horvath, the founder of Invisible People. It's a nonprofit dedicated to educating the public about homelessness through storytelling. If you've been following homelessness for the past few years, you likely have come across Invisible People and the powerful stories Mark tells. His recent documentary about how Finland solved homelessness has received over 2.2 million views on YouTube. National leaders often reach out to Mark for advice on how to best include the voices of the unhoused population. And I'd like to now welcome Mark Horvath to This Is Nashville. Mark, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I am smiling. That is a wonderful introduction.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm smiling. We're honored to have you here on the show with us. Okay, so you are a marketing consultant and you have lived experience with homelessness. You started Invisible People in 2008. Tell me more about Invisible People and why you started it.
Sure. So marketing consultant is not really the best term. I used to have a great job in television syndication. I made sure the world got Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Married with Children, those old television broadcast shows.
Yeah.
And then I ended up homeless on Hollywood Boulevard. I lived in a shelter for 7 years. Nobody should live in a shelter for 7 years. And I rebuilt my life back to a 3-bedroom house and a cushy marketing job, and the economy tanked in 2008. So I lost everything except my sobriety and came really close to homelessness a second time. And I grabbed the camera and I started interviewing homeless people. And I want to tell you that it was because I was trying to change the world. But the truth is, I was just giving myself purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. And, there was some thought and strategy behind it, because there was a disconnect from the public, what the public believes about homelessness, and there's a direct connection on what people believe about homelessness and policy change. But also the people making the decisions about homelessness are far removed from homeless people. So that's how it first started. And now I've traveled to over 300 cities, 9 different countries. We're a nonprofit media publisher. We do daily news, daily journalism, documentaries, animations, and we work to hopefully educate the public on the true realities of homelessness to influence policy change.
In the news, we often hear about homelessness when it includes negative news, like clashes between neighborhoods, government, and nonprofits over an encampment or people simply hanging out in the park. You hear a lot of different voices doing your documentaries and the work that you do. What are the main tell me this, what are the main concerns you have when it comes to how neighborhoods, government, businesses, and even nonprofits address the issue of homelessness?
Yeah, so there's a saying, if it bleeds, it leads. Mm-hmm. And negative, whatever the negative story is, seems to transmit a whole lot faster than the truth. That's a significant problem, especially with social media. One of the biggest issues is people blame homelessness on the person, that it's their fault, that they made bad decisions. If homelessness was a punishment for bad decisions, we'd all be homeless.
Mm-hmm.
For every $100 increase in median rent, homelessness increases by 9%. I thoroughly enjoyed your lead in to this program because you highlighted it's an affordable housing crisis. Yes, we have an addiction problem, but studies show that a good percentage of people end up on the streets sober and then start using drugs to be able to cope. And permanent supportive housing for someone that's outside. I mean, how do you stay sober when you're going to the bathroom behind a dumpster in a McDonald's parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Life sucks. So, one of the first things that we have to do for people that are outside sober or substance users is get them in a place that provides dignity so they can start healing from the layers of trauma.
To answer this for me, what should city leaders focus on to alleviate homelessness while listening to the concerns of neighborhoods and businesses?
Well, it's interesting. I was reading up on Nashville a little bit, and it looks like your first permanent supportive housing building went up this year. So you're a little late, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. There, every community is different. There's political pressure. What's happening is that the public is frustrated. They see homelessness growing. They see visible homelessness growing. And they want homeless people gone out of sight immediately. The issue is that politicians are often short-sighted. They are pushing a punitive response, which may get that homeless encampment removed for a short period of time. But if people don't have any place to go, they just come back. And with homelessness continuing to grow, this morning I was reading a one bedroom in Nashville is $1,600.
Yeah.
And that is almost Los Angeles prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rents in Raleigh, North Carolina have gone up 75%. Rents in Orlando have gone up 40%. Rents in Orlando or Austin, Texas continue to just skyrocket across the country. So what's happening is that for every person we're able to get out of homelessness into housing, there's another 2 to 3 people that are entering into homelessness. So when politicians push a punitive response to homelessness, it's only going to worsen the crisis. And putting someone in jail, when they get out of jail, they're still homeless. And now they have a criminal record, which makes it nearly impossible for them to get a job.
And, what you're saying is these politicians are criminalizing homelessness. And we've had a recent Supreme Court decision that pretty much gives them license to do that. But the politicians are only reacting and responding to what their constituents are asking for, at least the most vocal constituents they have. So let me ask you this. What is preventing people who aren't in the advocacy space from understanding not only the root causes of homelessness, but the experience of homelessness so we can then approach this problem a little differently?
That is such an important question. So we, as the homeless sector, we have failed. We have failed at educating the public. And many of these harmful beliefs are deeply rooted. Bootstrapping, for example, it's the American dream, but you have to have boots to be able to bootstrap. So often people, again, blame homelessness on that person instead of the systemic causes that are making homelessness worse. Now, today, you have, people that are frustrated sharing negative on social media. You have news media picking up that content, right? News media would often focus on the negative. Homeless person does this instead of homeless person gets into housing. And now you even have bad actors that are intentionally pushing propaganda out. It's become a wedge issue, right? The GOP, and it's not just on the right, because like we have Gavin Newsom and, we have Democrats that are also pushing for criminalization. It is a growing crisis. And again, like what I said is, politicians, they're looking at it and saying, I'm getting this pressure from my constituents to immediately remove this homeless camp. I know when I do it, because I believe people are smart, I know that this is just going to make it worse because there's nothing for these people to go. But in 2 years, I'm not going to be in office, right? What politicians need to do, and the public, is I like to say there's three things that people can do. Is one, educate yourself about homelessness. Educate yourself and those around you about the true realities of homelessness. And number two is get politically active. And, now more than ever, we have to fight to fix the affordable housing crisis. We have to fight the growing criminalization of homelessness. And number three is find a nonprofit or a mutual aid group in your community. I happen to like Open Table in Nashville. Find a nonprofit in your community that's working to solve homelessness, not just maintain homelessness, working to solve homelessness. And there is a difference, and support them, whether it be volunteering, whether it be financially, those things. Educate yourself, get politically active, and support your local nonprofits and mutual aid groups.
Mark, I've lived in a lot of different places in the country, and I've heard people from all over say things like, I want people to have housing, but I don't want them in my neighborhood or around my business or around where I like to shop. You talked a lot about the culture of this, people who may be concerned and who will take the 3 steps that you just laid out to get involved. Then there's other folks who, frankly, they may not even care. What can we do to really change this culture and consideration around homelessness so people recognize that we can take action and do something about it?
Well, a lot of this is still based on fear. You referenced our Helsinki documentary, and we are going to be uploading a documentary about Hennepin County, which is reducing homelessness. That's Minneapolis, Minnesota area. And they're creating housing where there's homelessness, and they're doing it in a successful way. In one scene in the Finland documentary, it's across the street. A permanent supportive housing first unit is across the street from a park where kids play, right? We have this fear that homeless people are these monsters, and they're not. I'm living proof that if we help people, when you saw me on Hollywood Boulevard walking, you would have crossed the street. And I'm living proof that if we help people be able to help themselves, they can become members of society again, successful members of society. Hennepin County is a great example. Now, you hear a lot about housing first and housing. It's a community-wide solution. Hennepin County took their COVID funding and they invested in eviction prevention. They invested in outreach and case management. They invested in housing-focused shelters. And what that means is we just can't warehouse people in tiny boxes or on cots. We have to create shelters that are only a temporary stay to get people into housing, because only housing solves homelessness. And then housing, permanent supportive housing or affordable housing. It's not one alone, it's all of it together. And when communities invest in a community-wide system to reduce homelessness, they have significant success.
A lot of folks are closer to becoming homeless than they may be aware of. And tell me this, how can folks who are busy with their own lives, how can we slow down to be a part of the solution and not the chorus of complaints?
Well, it's a very great question, and we need to be aware that we have a perfect storm of homelessness coming. We have the affordable housing crisis that's growing, but rarely people even talk about how automation is going to kill many jobs. I mean, trucks are going to drive themselves. They already are. Here in Pasadena, we have the first fully autonomous restaurant. There's no employees. It's completely robotic, right? I was at the airport and I went into one of those, stores where you grab some mints or some chips and a drink before you get on the plane. And there was no clerks. You put your credit card when you go through and you walk in, and it reads whatever you're walking out with and charges you automatically. We're already seeing this at McDonald's and fast food kiosks, right? The entry-level jobs. I mean, there's robots now that clean toilets. These entry-level jobs are going to disappear, and at the same time, the affordable housing crisis is growing, and communities are adopting this punitive response that will only worsen homelessness. We have a perfect storm coming. So to answer your question is back to people need to educate themselves on the true realities of homelessness, and then they need to get politically active. So as you said, politicians are often responding to their constituents. Well, the constituents that are smart enough to know that we need real solutions, eviction prevention, outreach, housing-focused shelters, and permanent supportive housing and affordable housing, they need to be louder than the people pushing for criminalization. Because, I don't know what it cost to incarcerate someone in Tennessee. I tried to look it up this morning. I couldn't find an exact answer, so I don't want to give a number. But here in California, it's $132,000 per year.
Wow.
The cost to incarcerate somebody in California has gone up 90% in 10 years. Jails are overcrowded, right? And we're going to arrest people and criminalize them for not being able to afford rent. One of the fastest growing demographics of homelessness is people working 1 and 2 jobs, living in a tent because they cannot afford rent. So those people, to directly answer your question, need to start going from their brains instead of their fear, because their fear of, this encampment is there, I just want it gone, pushing it to another neighborhood. That other neighborhood's going to push their encampment back, and we're just going to have homelessness everywhere.
I really want to thank you for coming on. Mark Horvath is the founder of Invisible People, a nonprofit dedicating to educating the public about homelessness through storytelling. Again, Mark, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we return, we'll discuss the triangle of homelessness, businesses, and neighborhoods, and how that impacts us on a local level. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ecolona, and this is Nashville. Thank you for joining us for episode 8 of our special series, In My Place, a series that strives to broaden the conversation and understanding around homelessness and what we can do to solve this issue. In My Place is brought to us thanks in part to Pinnacle Financial Partners. Now, before the break, we spoke with national homelessness advocate Mark Horvath about how homelessness impacts neighborhoods. Now we continue the conversation with our local guests representing views from city council, neighborhood, and nonprofit perspectives. For that, I'd like to welcome Ryan Lampa. He is the executive director of People Loving Nashville, Dede Byrd, retired nurse, and Jacob Coupin, Metro Council member who represents District 19. Thanks to you all for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, man.
Thanks for having us.
Really appreciate it. Let's start with you, Councilmember Coupin. You represent District 19, which is downtown Nashville. Yes. What concerns do you hear about homelessness, and who do you hear those concerns from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I also represent the Germantown area as well. And so I hear from constituents that are experiencing this challenge. And I try to make the distinction between homelessness and behavior, because I don't really hear criticism of people for not having a home. I hear behavioral challenges, things that people are experiencing. And so try to work on that balance. But I also hear positive, right? I hear so many folks like Ryan who's here working on this issue, helping people, coming down to support. So it's kind of a balance.
Your district includes two of the largest emergency shelters run by Nashville Rescue Mission, Room at the Inn, which was founded by Father Charles Strobel and provides comprehensive services from a day center to permanent housing. And the new Strobel House, a 90-unit permanent supportive housing facility. A lot of people are excited about that. And it's really unique because it's fully city funded. And finally, your district houses the largest known encampment in town. And our producers estimate at least 1,200 people experiencing homelessness in and out of your district on a daily basis. How can you balance complaints while also representing your unhoused constituents? It seems pretty difficult.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's important for me to be advocating, of course, for the safety of constituents, making sure that people are safe and comfortable. But I tell people, even if someone's unhoused, they're still a constituent to me. They pay sales tax. They're active in our community. Sometimes they're working jobs in the downtown core. So to me, it's a balance of all sorts of constituencies. And as you mentioned, I've seen my colleagues in other districts close an encampment and then fence it off, and that's it. Downtown, we're not really able to do that, right? We know people are coming in and out of homelessness. We know people are coming into our city who are experiencing homelessness. So I think it's a big picture approach. And sometimes I'm part of conversations for smaller areas, and I try to remind those conversations that even if we address it in this smaller area by pushing folks to a different area, there's a bigger conversation, and try to figure out how do we not move people from point A to point B, but actually get them housing, get them resources. We've got the Strobel Center, as you mentioned, which is an exciting opportunity to bring people not from place to place, but off the street into housing and give them the support that they need.
Now, Dede, tell me how you got involved and interested in homelessness.
Well, COVID changed everything for me. I went from full-time to part-time and PRN, and I was at Lowe's one day, and there was a woman who was overdosed on the sidewalk. And as a nurse anesthetist, I recognized immediately what was going on with her. The ants were eating her lunch. She was unresponsive. I called 911, and all of a sudden I realized that what was once a small encampment at Brookmead had grown exponentially with COVID, and the problems that were in Brookmead were no longer individuals that just couldn't find a pathway forward, but predators had moved in and they were using homelessness as a shield. And we had a drug dealer, we had prostitution, we had domestic violence. So we got involved with the MNPD trying to figure out how to separate the most vulnerable person that was being a victim, that was being abused, and the predators who had no interest in housing whatsoever.
Now, I understand you became a quick learner and educated yourself. You also became a member of the Continuum of Care. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I realized that I didn't need to be abrasive with the nonprofits. When I looked that up, there were over 100 nonprofits that were serving the homeless population in Nashville. And I asked the same question of everyone. I said, why is this not working? And one of the many answers that I got was there's not a place for these individuals to go. So I joined the COC as a community member so I could understand the nonprofit world. And then I started going to all the committee meetings that Nashville.gov, anything that dealt with homelessness, I went. MDHA, COC, to educate myself about why we as a city couldn't help these individuals at almost every level, like the person that just became homeless, the drug addicted person, the person with mental illness. I mean, it's a fluid situation for all these people, and nobody travels the same path.
What do you think would help bring neighbors, businesses, nonprofits, council members, and city leaders together on one accord? You talk to 100. You recognize that there's 100 nonprofit organizations out here. You've been working with city leaders. You're continuing asking the question, why haven't we solved this? Why haven't we fixed this? What do you think will help bring all of these entities together to come up with a solution?
I think that it starts with having the Office of Homeless Services be the umbrella for communications. It's very important for them to understand all the people that are involved. You know, we had businesses that went out of business because of our encampment. We had over 90 people die at Brookmead before it was closed. We had a child that was trying to be raised in Brookmead before we dealt with that. You have to understand as a community that these individuals, addiction and mental illness is a disease process. It is not a choice at this point. They are just surviving. There is trauma, severe trauma for some of these people that take years for them to get over that trauma. And as a community, I just try to educate people that you can't sit on your couch. You have to get involved. If it's your church, if it's your local school with the children, if it's the COC like it was for me, you have to get off your couch and involved in your community. And you have to talk to these individuals and understand. I still have one individual on Charlotte who doesn't want to be housed. He has no intention of ever being housed. He's been housed in the past. That's what he wants to do, is be on Charlotte. And there's nothing that we can do. None of the nonprofits have been able to help him, and us, and we as a community. And I just think that people need to educate themselves. They need to do I'm not using myself as an example because my path was so different than most people's. I love educating myself. I love going to every meeting, every opportunity, just like this show, just to voice and hear other people, hear what they have to say. So get off the couch. Find out where in your community you can help. And it may be something as simple as dropping off food at the local church. So
thank you for that. Now, Ryan, you're the executive director of People Loving Nashville. Tell us briefly, what does your organization do?
Yeah, thank you. So last 16 years, we've been bringing food to the streets. We bring clothing. We bring just relief and survival gear to those that are living outside. So we have our main outreach is on Monday nights. We also have another outreach on Thursdays. On top of that, we've realized that it's not just the physical attributes of what we bring that was important. A lot of the streets were asking, hey, this is awesome that I'm getting a meal, I'm getting clothing, I'm getting emergency supplies like tents and sleeping bags, but also relationship was something that the streets were asking for. And so we invest in that. We bring volunteers, we host a lot of volunteers, and we do that in a very safe and coordinated way. To have relationships, places where people can come and say, man, this is a tough thing that I'm going through in my life, and that we actually invest in our volunteers to be able to provide that. We have a team of outreach workers as well that work what we call our homefulness journey. And so we walk with individuals throughout the year to get from homelessness to homefulness. And that looks like a bunch of different things. It could look like documentation and IDs to get into housing, but also ways to heal, whether it be from, like we were talking about before, with addiction and recovery, maybe just even physical healing, emotional healing. We all work in that and partner with other partners within the city. And then lastly, once people are in housing, we have an option to heal and to grow, post experiencing homelessness. So we have our restoration program, which is tied to our coffee shop called Paradiso's Coffee Shop. It's on West End here, and the coffee is roasted from the streets. Folks that are coming out of homelessness into homefulness, they're actually finding a place to work and a place to heal. They work with our caseworkers there, our specialists, to find mind, body, and soul healing. So we're kind of a vast variety of things that we're trying to attack here.
You talked about the relationships that you all build with the people you're working with to create that trust and authenticity. I want to talk about relationships between nonprofits like yours, neighborhoods and businesses. Do you think nonprofits listen to enough to neighborhoods and businesses and vice versa?
You know what? I don't think we do, to be quite honest with you. I think that there's not like mechanisms that are good enough to really link those two things together. A lot of times we'll get like a memo or we'll get a text or like, hey, you know that somebody's talking about you guys. You know that there's an impact of your work that you're doing within your city. So to kind of, dive deep into that, we respond to those that are experiencing homelessness, bring those relief, bring the community, bring the connection to resources. And at times the community is like, hey, when you bring those resources, that means that more people come around. And the mechanism which the impact that I hear from local businesses, even neighborhoods, I think a lot of time we're disjointed. And so I'm so glad to have Dede here at the table because we've been able to form a relationship, a friendship, I would even call it, because she comes to our meetings. She's kind, and she comes and says, hey, and we'll be kind but very direct and say, this is how this is affecting this neighborhood. This is how it's affecting as a citizen. And I'm like, wow, I need to hear that more. Same with Councilman Coupon. We've been able to talk over the past year and form a relationship there. I'm not sure how we got to that point. I participate in committee work as well. I'm part of the COC. I'm in this. I have a full-time job now working in this realm. And that's afforded me the capacity to be able to have those conversations. I look at Dede, I'm like, I love that you're coming to the table, and I love that I know you because I see you often enough. Right. But that's not the common citizen. No. The common citizen who's being affected by this doesn't have time to come on WPLN, on the afternoon and be like, hey, I'm going to have a conversation with people that I've actually had a conversation with before. So to answer your question, no, I don't think we have good enough mechanisms for that.
I'd love to hear from all three of you on this. There's been a lot of focus nationwide on the visibility of homelessness and criminalizing it. What do you think cities like ours are doing well, and where are opportunities where we can absolutely improve? I'll start with you, council member.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think, the Office of Homeless Services, the creation of that, the kind of umbrella of homeless outreach has been really good. And I think we've got phenomenal nonprofits on the ground that are working so hard to address this issue. So I do think we're doing well with that. We know we've got a community quality of life team from MNPD that goes out to these encampments and works with the residents there. So I think we've got a lot of pieces that are going well. I think when I look at my district, the challenge I see is that we're continuing to kind of cross off areas that unhoused folks have been staying and saying, hey, you can't stay there anymore. But we're running out of places. When you talk about out of sight, I think you're seeing more and more people come into the streets because we're saying you can't be here, you can't be here, you can't be here. And one of the things I'm looking at is, well, where can we go? Where can we take folks? And recognize that balance of people that are, staying on public land or perhaps not supposed to be staying on public land, but also if we're not giving another opportunity or another lane to run in, that's a challenge. So it's obviously a very complex issue, but I think there's a lot of great minds coming together to address this and solve this problem.
Dede?
Well, for me, it was a conundrum because I appreciated the fact that the outreach workers were trying to protect the individuals in our encampment. I mean, I'm from the medical field, so I understand HIPAA. You want to put a name to these individuals because they're individuals, right? But you have to protect them also. So one of the things that I tried to do in our community, I didn't try to shut people down on our social media. I tried to educate them. There were so many negative comments. It's a choice, they should do this, they should do that. Well, that's easy for you to say from your couch. Mm-hmm. So if you want to come down here and help us, then I'll talk to you. But if all you're going to do is critique the efforts that are being made, and I feel that outreach workers deserve hazard duty pay. They are asked to go into places that are not even meant for human habitation and work with these individuals time after time. The first path for them is usually not successful. They have to be offered multiple paths in order to be successful, is what I've seen in the 4 years that I've been doing this.
Mm-hmm. Ryan.
Yeah, I think that what we're doing well is also what we could use work on. So what we're doing well, I think that in the past few years, even since COVID, we've been able to start talking about a clear and concise plan. A plan that's moving in a direction that's clear enough for all of us, even us at the table, to be able to understand and participate in. We're moving towards that. We have not achieved that in my eyes. We have not achieved a plan that I could put on a desk and say, let me just basically explain this to you. So we as a city, a community, businesses, nonprofits, faith communities, government, whoever wants to join in this to be able to participate in the plan. It's not clear enough. It's not concise, and it's not pointed in a good enough direction for us to be able to understand, okay, we can solve this. In my eyes, the way I look at this, I could be totally disagreed with on this, but in my eyes, I think that achieving a relative amount of where our system, our homelessness system, COC, can handle the inflow of those that are coming into homelessness and handle the folks getting into housing, I think it's actually possible. I really do. It needs that clear and concise plan that we all can come around, and that we're putting way too much focus on eliminating encampments. Though I see that there's good things that could come out of that. There's parts of it that could be good. There's parts of it that could be really bad as well. We're putting way too much emphasis on that.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. We're talking this hour about homelessness, neighborhoods, and businesses as a part of our special series, In My Place. My guests are Dede Byrd, Ryan Lampa, and council member Jacob Coopin. I want to talk a little bit about virtue signaling around the unhoused. Folks who want to end homelessness sometimes point to people who take a stance of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, when they're frustrated about the lack of progress being made in tackling this issue. But really, is it that easy? I mean, to say one group of people are extending the problem by availing themselves or resources to a solution, is it that easy to just say, hey, the NIMBY folks are getting in the way and not doing anything? Kind of to your point a little bit, Dede, is like they're sitting on their couch and they're complaining. What have you all seen when there's an opportunity to make a change in a neighborhood and folks who claim they want to see homelessness solved are doing everything they can to stand in the way of an actual solution being created?
Man, I love it.
Well, I'm going to jump in on that one right out of the gate. We were accused of that at the beginning, and we did not understand the full problem of homelessness. We got involved because people were dying on the sidewalks. And our businesses were going out of business. So once we educated ourselves and we realized that it takes a community to make a difference, and there are individuals that throw up a roadblock. But I think that happens at a lot of levels. Oh. There were a lot of people who wouldn't even talk to me for the first year because that's what they thought I was.
Okay.
And so I felt that on the other end, and I had to educate not only my community, but the friends that I made in the nonprofit world and in the homeless services world. We're not going to go anywhere. We want to get these people housed. We don't want anyone to go to jail. They're just going to come right back out and still be vulnerable. So I think that's a two-way street, and people have to educate themselves on what is happening in their community. We pay too much money to live in this city for this city not to be able to take care of each other.
Mm-hmm. I would totally agree with you, Dede, on that. Because it's funny, for coming from a nonprofit side, I think what one of the problems is that when we see community groups come and activate, is that it's just like all of a sudden there's just like this big explosion of like, oh, there's a community, NIMBYism or whatever, like that's some Facebook groups, people just like compounding on comments about pictures, and it's like, dude, we've been doing this. People live in Nashville, and other organizations, we've been doing this a long time. 16 years, just our organization. And it's like, oh, you all just want to come in and be like, oh, we don't, what you need to do is X, Y, Z. And it's like, hang on a second, we've been working on this for a very long time. And then it's just instantly, I'm like, no, I'm not trying to talk to you. Right. Now, here's what I love about the NIMBYism is that there's a newfound passion that's really good. And that if you're willing to step into the conversation and say, hey, I don't know everything, but I care. And there's something inside me that, and I'm going to show you that by showing up to committee meetings, or even just having conversation or trying to build conversation or trying to build an open way of communicating, then you actually have a way of sharpening us, I think, as nonprofits and as city. Because you come from a different side. You're like, not in my backyard. Now, my guess is that not in my backyard, because I hear from you, is because nobody should be living like this.
Right.
Nobody should be dying. Nobody should be suffering like this.
Right.
There is also another group of folks that's like, NIMBY because it makes me feel uncomfortable, and somebody figure this out. And it's like, okay, there's no conversation happening there. And so I just want to compound on that. I'm like, hey, bring on a bit of the NIMBYism that want to stay activated and at least have a conversation, because I think that you actually play a crucial part in bringing passion and maybe even new ideas and saying things like, hey, our outreach workers should get hazard pay. I totally agree with you. Like going into the fray every single day is an incredible thought that I don't think our communities are even thinking of. They're like, wow, there's people that go into the camps every single day.
Yeah.
And I think to that point too, and to Ryan's point about a plan and kind of working on that plan, I know there's a lot of folks that I talk to that have that NIMBY mentality, that they don't want this here, and would be willing to step into the conversation, willing to provide resources, but may not know how, right? So I think to your point of that sharpening us, and I think creating that, taking that passion and directing it in a way that's helpful, I think that's a big thing that I know I'm working on. I know a lot of organizations are working on, is finding ways to take folks that say, hey, I don't like this. And to your point, I've entered the conversation. I'm saying, great, welcome. Here's where we've come from. Here's where we're going. Here's how you can help. I think that's really important.
Yeah, because honestly, I think the majority of us, I wouldn't say all of us, but the majority of us, NIMBY, organizations, government, we're all like, hey, we want like safety and opportunities for everyone in the community to be able to flourish and heal, at least to heal. I think we're all on the same page.
Criminalizing homelessness is not helping the situation at all. I think we all can agree on that.
Agreed.
But look, if I have time for one more question, I'm going to address it to you, Council Member Coupin. What would you like to see local government do or create a permanent solution?
Yeah, and I appreciate the question. I agree. I don't think criminalizing is the answer. As we know, the more criminalized an individual becomes, the harder it is for them to get housing, and it perpetuates that cycle. It doesn't really address the issue, in my opinion. I'd like to see us continue down the road of the Strobel Center of providing resources and realistic solutions to folks, right? Finding a way to say, well, you can't be here, but where can they go? Where can they be? Finding a positive path to direct people to. I think that's so important, and continuing to invest in the collaboration, right? We talked about Office of Homeless Services and hundreds of nonprofits, finding ways to synergize those efforts, again, to address this issue. Nobody should be living like this. I think to the points made, whether it's a stakeholder or an organization or an individual experiencing homelessness, I think everyone has that same goal of getting folks off the street, into housing, into safety and resources.
Jacob Coupin is a Metro Council member for District 19. He was joined by Dede Byrd and Ryan Lampa, the Executive Director of People Loving Nashville. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for this conversation. Really appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we're going to take one last break. When we come back, we'll hear from someone who has lived experience with homelessness to hear his thoughts on what we've discussed today. You can join the conversation by tweeting us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back. I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. Welcome back to episode 8 of our special series, In My Place, a series where we talk about homelessness and explore solutions to this problem that impacts all of us. And as usual, we're ending our episode by bringing on a special guest commentator, and today we welcome Tyrese Payton, who currently lives in Old Tent City. That's a large encampment in downtown Nashville. Tyrese, I really appreciate you being here. Welcome to This Is Nashville, my friend.
Man, thank you, sir.
Okay, so a lot of people will be surprised to hear that you're working cleaning schools at night.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Tell me, how long have you experienced homelessness, and what do you want listeners to know that they may not have heard from prior guests?
So I was homeless like 10 years ago, Fort Nigglet. So I had started rapping, started singing. I started doing soul. I came out with my shoe line. Out there homeless, made music inside my tent homeless and stuff. So I had to like motivate myself and stuff like that. What's
something about the experience that you've had that, we wouldn't have heard from other guests and that people who are listening may not know or understand?
So I had a tour, I had a tour, to stay focused, to motivate myself because I ain't want my family in Arkansas to know about my situation being homeless.
Okay. So does your family know now?
I don't know.
Why don't you want your family to know about your situation?
Because I want time to go back home. Because I'm 47 years old, like that.
I understand. Now, have you had experiences with businesses in neighborhoods in this journey for the past 10 years?
Yes, sir. So I had started homeless, so I was homeless and stuff, homeless into a businessman. I had my first, so I had my first business license, called a real estate of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And, like buy houses, and fix them up and sell them.
Have businesses? How have businesses treated you in the past 10 years?
A business, pretty good stuff like that.
They've been pretty good neighborhoods as well. You haven't had too many negative experiences.
No,
say?
Sir.
Okay, so what can people do to better listen to, understand, and hear the concerns of folks who are unhoused, who are looking for a home?
Sometimes you gotta sit, sometimes you gotta just listen to them, talk to them, so like that.
How often do people do that for you?
Me, so much and stuff.
They talk to you?
Yes, sir.
What about some folks other people who are unhoused? Do they feel like people take time to actually talk to them, or are they just walking by, ignoring them like they don't exist, or just giving them some money and moving on?
Yeah, that's it. That's all they do. Give them some money, or tell them like push on, so like that.
What does that do to you when that happens?
Well, like me, I ain't never had that problem because I don't care myself like that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Old Tent City while we got a couple minutes left.
Old Tent City?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You live there right now, right?
Yes, sir.
You're affected directly by the city's decision to demolish 6 of the structures in your encampment.
Yes, sir. So I had built my own structure too.
Okay.
I built 2 of them.
So the city's going to be tearing down one or both of those, huh?
Yeah, they trying to, but I'm going to disassemble of my own structures.
Okay. Tell me, what's going on down there?
Well, like everybody, they don't have like the resources, the access. They don't know where to turn to, who to ask. Or like me, I try to like motivate them, influence them, but like everybody all to themselves.
That's got to be pretty tough, though. I understand that situation, particularly if you're trying to motivate folks.
Yeah.
But the pressure can seem so much that they have no place to go. These structures, this place that they've called home for a considerable amount of time, I can imagine, is gone. What could have been done better? What could the city have be doing better when it comes to Old Tent City?
Trying to help the Old Tent City, because the Old Tent City been here for like a long time, a wave pole. I had moved to Tennessee. There have been people out there like 8 years, 10 years, 15, 20-some years.
So you're saying Old Tent City is older than some of the houses in these neighborhoods that are popping up around this city?
Yes, sir.
And whatnot. What do you want the city to do? What do you want people who are listening here to know, and more importantly to do? We had a guest, Dede, who said people got to get up off their couch, educate themselves, and do something. What do you want folks to do?
The same thing, to learn something new, or do skill, or a trade, or a talent, or anything. If there's a will, there's a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
And that's for the people who are unhoused. What about the people who are listening, who are sitting in their cars, maybe at work, maybe at home? What about those folks? What do you want them to be able to do?
Sometimes, just come down to Old Tent City, listen to them, talk to them, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The city is coming, and you said you're going to take down the structures that you've built.
Yes, sir.
Where are you? Where you gonna go?
I don't know right now, but I plan on find somewhere else to go and build up again. That's my plan.
That's your plan?
Yes, sir.
Have you worked with any organizations or outreach workers?
No, Salvation Army at first, but I know like open tables. So I've been with open tables like 10 years ago.
Okay. So you've been working with the people at Open Table Nashville, and they've been helping you out.
Yes, sir.
Is it tough to encourage? Maybe you've answered this, but let me ask again. Is it tough to encourage some of the other people who are in Old Tent City to work with organizations like Open Table Nashville?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I talk to them, but like everybody hard-headed, stubborn,
scared, hard-headed, and stubborn. So it sounds to me like people who are unhoused, from what your experience, what you're telling me, those folks are a little bit scared, hard-headed, and stubborn. But the people who have homes are scared, hard-headed, and stubborn. So what do we all need to do to get right?
I don't know, sir. It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
You just gotta stay at it, stay focused, motivated, and stay active.
Stay focused, motivated, and stay active.
Yes, sir.
That's advice not only for me, but everybody listening.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank you so much for being here. Payton, pardon me.
Yes,
Tyrese,
sir.
Thank you for being here, my man.
Thank you too, sir.
All right. And thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Judith Tackett and Tasha A.F. Lemley. It was also directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our technical director and board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation doesn't end here. Tweet us. You can find us on Instagram or call us at 615-751-2500. Special thanks to Pinnacle Financial Partners, and This is Nashville is celebrating United Hate Against Action Week. They're calling on all Nashvillians to take a stand against hate by joining a citywide day of action. You can join today Representative Afton Ben and Council Member Zulfat Suhara at a community event at 3:30 at the Z. Alexander Luby Community Center. Check it out today. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.